The practice guide that I selected from the What Works Clearinghouse website was titled Teaching Academic Content and Literacy to English Learners in Elementary and Middle School. This evidence-based practice focuses on the vocabulary instruction of elementary and middle school classrooms with students that have limited proficiency in English. In order to be academically successful, these students need to have the language and literacy skills of listening, reading, writing, and speaking. 4 specific areas or recommendations are emphasized: academic vocabulary, content area instruction, writing instruction, and small group intervention. Often, though, these areas overlap and recur. This practice can be employed by classroom teachers, special educators, administrators, paraeducators, and those involved in professional development. This evidence-based practice includes 4 recommendations that help teachers to concurrently teach academic content and literacy skills to students in elementary and middle school that have limited English proficiency. First, it is recommended to teach a set of vocabulary words intensively across many school days using a variety of instructional formats. This means that the vocabulary is introduced through an engaging piece of text relevant to the content. This set should be small and should be more focused on developing depth of knowledge rather than a breadth of terms. While explicitly teaching vocabulary, teachers should include word learning strategies so students can begin to independently find word meaning. Second, it is recommended to integrate oral and written language instruction in content area teaching. This means that instructional tools like videos and graphic organizers are utilized, and there should be opportunities for students to talk about content in pairs and small groups. Also, teachers should explicitly teach general and content-specific vocabulary while providing time for writing opportunities for students. Third, it is recommended to provide structured opportunities to develop written language skills. This means that students are given writing assignments anchored to content and supported for students' entry into and development of writing. Again, small groups and pairs can be used so students can work and talk together about writing. Finally, teachers should assess writing periodically to identify student needs and provide positive feedback. Fourth, it is recommended to provide small group instruction intervention to students struggling in areas of literacy and English language development. This means these students should spend time on basic reading skills, but also vocabulary development, listening, and reading comprehension strategies. Teachers can use assessments to identify student needs, then small group instruction should consist of 3 to 5 students struggling with literacy, and the instruction should target those student needs. The recommendation that I selected to research was the first. Teach a set of academic vocabulary words intensively across several days using a variety of instructional activities. I selected this because one of my students in my summer school class was an English language learner. Very early on my first day teaching on my own, I invited the student to answer a question, but she did not want to answer. I learned from my mentor teacher that she had not participated in any classroom discussion and completed her work in Spanish. This student has inspired me to find new ways to engage English language learning students, and I chose this recommendation to help with my new goal. The first study used to support the recommendation was Closing the Gap, addressing the vocabulary needs of English language learners in bilingual and mainstream classrooms. The researchers in this study recognized that gaps in vocabulary knowledge most often lead to gaps in reading performance, something that is a good indicator for academic success. They also state that educators cannot rely on incidental vocabulary learning, but instead need to focus on a depth of knowledge surrounding vocabulary, including things like semantic associates and connotations. They developed an intervention program to address these things. The goal of the study was to test the intervention program that combined direct instruction of vocabulary with instruction on word learning strategies. They accomplished this by examining 254 students, both ELL and non-ELL, from 9 fifth-grade classrooms across the country. The comparison group were classes not given the program, and the intervention group were classes given the program. The program lasted 15 weeks, and 5 days a week, the comparison group received a 30 to 45-minute lesson that incorporated the direct instruction and word learning strategies. The researchers completed pre-tests and post-tests that assessed 5 things: mastery, word association, morphology, polysemy, and close reading. The direction, instruction, and strategies revolved around these aspects of vocabulary. From the pretest and post-test, the study found that the intervention group showed greater gains for mastery, word association, polysemy, and close. The intervention group also showed marginal gains for morphology. The effects of the program for reading comprehension were less dramatic, but still measurable for both ELLs and EOs. Some differences in performance were linked to sites and could be the result of demographic differences between the participating schools. The fidelity of instruction was considered, but the researchers concluded that these did not contribute to performance differences. The results led to one key suggestion, and that is that teachers should focus on teaching about new words rather than teaching more new words. This way, students are learning the skills to figure out the meaning of new words independently. This can be accomplished by designing activities that revolve around the vocabulary attributes taught and tested in the study: mastery, word association, morphology, polysemy, and close reading. A second study used to support the recommendation was conducted in response to this previous study. This study is titled "The Effectiveness and Ease of Implementation of an Academic Vocabulary Intervention for Linguistically Diverse Students in Urban Middle Schools." Like the previous study, the researchers recognized the reciprocal relationship between vocabulary and reading comprehension. Their goal was to evaluate the effectiveness of an academic vocabulary program designed to promote reading comprehension skills in low-performing urban middle schools. These classrooms had high numbers of language minority learners. 3 principles guided their development of a vocabulary program. First, students should have a deep understanding of a small amount of words. Second, target words should be high-utility, general-purpose academic words. And third, there needs to be a balance between direct teaching and word-learning strategies. The program was named ALIAS, Academic Language Instruction for All Students. Because the previous study required confirmation of this type of instruction in different contexts with different materials, this study builds on previous work by working with older English language learning students. They accomplished this by examining 476 monolingual and bilingual 6th grade students from 7 middle schools in the southwestern U.S. The treatment group included 12 teachers and taught 13 classes with the program, and the control group included 7 teachers that taught 8 classes without the program. Both groups had classes 4 days a week for 45 minutes. Students were pre-tested and post-tested on reading vocabulary using different forms of the Stanford Achievement Test, and they were pre-tested and post-tested on reading comprehension using the Gates-McGinty test. The program had a clear developmental sequence for every time new words were introduced. First, students were exposed to the target words through text. Second, teachers activated the prior knowledge of students of the target words. Third, students work on the word's meaning in the context of the text. Fourth, teachers introduced additional meanings of the word. Fifth, teachers presented a morphological analysis of the different forms of the word. And last, students used the word in student writing. The study revealed positive and significant effects of the program on the treatment groups for 4 vocabulary characteristics: mastery, which is the definition; morphological decomposition, which is the different forms of the word; and word meanings in text, which is comprehension of the word in the context of the text. The treatment group also showed positive and marginally significant effects on reading comprehension and target word association, which is other words that could be associated with the target word. This study found that these positive effects did not differ significantly between LM learners and NE learners because all students improved their scores somewhat equally. Based on these results, the researchers suggest that middle school teachers should move beyond simple definitions to focus on depth of word knowledge. They should also provide multiple planned exposures to new words in authentic ways. These suggestions echo the views of the previous study, but this study can extend the usability into middle grades as well. The third study used to support the recommendation was the impact of an instructional intervention on the science and language learning of middle grade English language learners. The researchers in this study looked at previous studies that tested the effectiveness of inquiry-based learning and that incorporated language and cultural backgrounds of students. They used this information to evaluate the effectiveness of QUEST, an intervention designed to improve the language proficiency and science knowledge of middle grade students that were native speakers of English and English language learners. QUEST aimed to incorporate the results of previous studies as a program that 1. Aligns with national science standards, 2. Focuses on literacy development, 3. Uses students' first languages, and 4. Provides professional development for both science content and literacy. QUEST was composed of 2 elements that were not included in the district curriculum: instructional materials and professional development. The instructional materials put a premium on hands-on experimentation through a 5E approach to learning: engage, explore, explain, extend, and evaluate. It also focuses on scaffolding and the use of visuals like graphic organizers. Quest also targets English oral proficiency through explicit vocabulary instruction that introduced 15 new words per week alongside strategies to improve word learning, like drawing on cognate knowledge and using root words and base words. The researchers accomplished this by examining 890 bilingual and monolingual students in 6th grade classrooms in Texas. The treatment group included 10 teachers that each taught 2 classes using Quest, and the control group included the same 10 teachers that taught another 2 classes using the district standard curriculum. Students were pre-tested on vocabulary and passage comprehension, then they were post-tested on the content of the science topics taught and general and discipline-specific vocabulary. The results of the study showed that all students improved between pre-test and post-test, but the treatment group exhibited larger absolute gains. These students showed the most significant improvements for vocabulary and less statistically significant improvements for science. Of the ELLs in the study, those in the treatment program outperformed those in the control group in both science and vocabulary. If the effect sizes were extrapolated, the researchers calculated that a continuation of the program would produce significant gains over the district curriculum over time. The program in this study incorporated some other things that the previous study's vocabulary intervention did not, like the focus on the use of visuals for instruction, like graphic organizers, but the explicit vocabulary instruction was central to Quest. The researchers suggest that teachers can achieve statistical improvements in the student success of ELLs without hampering the success of English proficient learners. They argue this is possible by making use of visuals, modeling, and discussion. Specifically for vocabulary and literacy, teachers should use explicit vocabulary instruction, guided readings, and they should partner ELLs with students who are more English proficient. The next study used to support the recommendation was enhancing social studies vocabulary and comprehension for 7th grade English language learners, findings from 2 experimental studies. The goal of this study was to examine the efficacy of incorporating practices associated with middle school social studies instructions as a means of enhancing vocabulary knowledge and comprehension for ELLs. These practices included research-based vocabulary and concept instruction, the use of media to build comprehension, the use of graphic organizers, and structured peer pairings. This study includes many of the aspects the previous study tested with the addition of media. They achieved this by conducting 2 experiments at separate times, something else the previous 3 studies did not do. In the first experiment in Texas, 4 social studies teachers from 2 middle schools taught 381 7th grade students across 15 sections. In the second experiment, also in Texas, 4 social studies teachers from 2 middle schools taught 507 7th grade students across 17 sections. In both experiments, teachers taught for 50 minutes for 5 days a week for 9 to 12 weeks. All of the groups received the same number of classes, but some programs took longer due to scheduling and interruptions. All students were pre-tested and post-tested to assess content, vocabulary, and the ability to identify and explain big ideas from the content. The same treatment intervention was used by teachers in all treatment classes, so apart from the control groups, which did not receive the instruction for both experiments. The daily instructional routine consisted of, first, a brief overview of the big idea, second, explicit vocabulary, third, discussion built around a short video clip, fourth, a teacher-led or paired student reading assignment, followed by generating and answering questions, and finally, a wrap-up activity in the form of a graphic organizer or other writing exercise.